Hello and welcome to this video on Qucamba Reports What's New version 2. Let's have a look on the agenda. I'm going to start this video with a short introduction to Qucamba Reports, but I'm going to keep this really short, so if you're new to Qucamba Reports, you're encouraged to start with our tutorial videos on Qucamba.com. Likewise, I'm going to skip most of the improvements that we did to version 1. That's just because I want to talk about version 2 today. Also, don't worry, this is not going to be a slides only video. Of course, we'll take a look into some demos as well. Finally, there are some changes regarding the licensing model. Qucamba is going to introduce a new license type for NIV or Business Central end users. Basically, Qucamba Reports consists of 3 modules working together to give the report developer a fluid report design workflow. The creator lets you create entirely new reports. By selecting out of 4 different wizard types, you create simple lists, multiple grouped lists with any number of data items nested to any depth, a document wizard to create quotes, invoices, credit memos, and any other kind of document report. And finally, there's a label wizard for printing on adhesive labels. Regardless of the wizard you select, the result will always be a clean-coded RDLC report with a layout contained in a CIL report object. The report generated looks as if it was created by a professional developer. All code that is required to run the report is contained in the report object. There are absolutely no dependencies to any other CSR object or to any other third-party product. You can take this report and deploy it as part of your ISV solution. Unlike other reporting tools in the market, there are no runtime licenses your customers need to pay for. The style is used to change the visual design of a layout or to even change structural parts of a report. There are many styles available, for example, for replacing colors or fonts, changing matrix. One of our most popular styles lets you even implement carryovers, which are subtotals on the end of a page as well as on the top of a subsequent page. Fully automated, just within seconds. We distinguish between instant styling and batch styling. While the first one means that you load a report into preview and apply styles on its layout, the latter is used to apply stylings to dozens or even hundreds of reports in a batch. These so-called styling boards can be saved to disk and reapplied at any time to any report in any NAV database. Finally, the preview is used to let the report designer preview his layout changes immediately and without the need of loading the layout back to C-side, compiling and saving the report, then starting with the report, for example, from within C-side, going into the client to confirm the request page until finally the report gets displayed. Instead, the report designer places Qucamba Reports on one screen, the layout designer on another screen, and each time the report designer saves the layout by pressing Ctrl S, the layout updates and shows the latest changes exactly the way they're going to look like when the report is run from within NAV. For display, the preview uses either generated data or data taken from a live database, so there's not necessarily access to the live database required. A preview session can be started from an open layout, which is detected by Qucamba Reports automatically, or it can be loaded directly from the database. In this case, the layout designer can be opened directly from the preview without the need to go into C-side. And after applying changes, the preview allows to save back these changes to the application. The preview is yet a free tool and it can be downloaded after registration from Qucamba.com. So let me just show you some of the possibilities of Qucamba Reports now. This is the start screen of Qucamba Reports, and I'd like to create a new sales statistics report. A report that shows the customer ledger entries grouped by salesperson, by country, by customer, and finally by document type. And since I need grouping, I'm going to start with a complex list report. From the list of factory templates, I'm going to select the QR list A4 portrait paper format. From a list of tablets template, I select the group list report, And from the list of available ID, I pick just one available ID and give my report a name. In this case, I'm going to call it Sales Stat, which in German is VK Statistik. In the next wizard step, I'm going to select the table and I search for Cust and Ledge. And from the Ledger Entry Tables category, I double-click the Customer Ledger Entry table and proceed with the next wizard step. From the list of fields, I'm going to activate the Customer checkbox, and from the Customer, I'd also like to include the name. And since I'd like to have the report group by country, which isn't contained in the Customer Ledger Entries table, I need to include it from the customer. So I pick this from the customer's fields as well. Here it is. And again, I include the name from the country. Furthermore, I would like to include the posting date, the document type, document number, description, and some numeric fields, for example, amount, sales, and profit LCY. And I proceed with the next wizard step, which lets me set up my grouping. And I first start with the salesperson code, which actually isn't in the list. That's because I missed it in the previous step. I go back and search for salesperson. Here it is. And I'd also like to include the salesperson name. So now I can set up my grouping. I select the salesperson code, the country region, the customer number, and the document type. Add it to the right and click Next. With this next step, we're leaving the data model design of our report and we're coming to the layout part. So here I'm going to include all the fields that have already been added to the right window pane, except for the entry number, which I'm going to remove from the list. That's because I just don't want to see it in the tab lists later. Now the wizard lets me specify which fields I'd like to have being totaled, and these three suggested fields are already perfect. So I leave this as it is and proceed to the last wizard step. Here I activate the group indentation, which gives a better overview when using multiple grouping. And I click Finish to let Qucamba Reports create the report for me. The report is now being uploaded to the application, compiled there, and opened in the preview with generated data. So here it is. And of course, I can also switch back to Seaside, search for my new report, and start it from here and run it with live data. Switch to the print layout view, and here it is. Now let's say somebody at the company asks me to do some layout changes. And since I don't want to change the layout of this report for all users, I'm going to create a custom layout for this particular user first. So I go back to Qucamba Reports. My report is still open in preview. And I create as new custom layout. So let's say the guy who asked me for another layout is Peter. So I'm going to type in Peter's layout. This wasn't quite correct, but that doesn't matter. I can change the name afterwards. I go to custom layouts and click on rename to correct this Peter's layout. And I can also activate the layout from here by clicking this icon. I can select it in the Cronus ID. Okay. Now, this is still the same layout as the integrated layout that has just been created by the wizard. Let's say we'd like to change the background color, which is according to the style guide white smoke. And Peter asked me to also change the page orientation to landscape, and maybe he'd like to have carryovers. So I turn on the styler, the instant styler, pick replace colors from the list of styles, place a check mark in text box background, since I'd like to change the background of the text boxes. And I'm going to pick the old color, which is white smoke. And I'm going to replace it with, let's say, lavender. Okay. Then I need a style to change the layout to landscape. And for this I'm going to pick the page layout style. And I click A4 landscape. A4 is a standard format for German paper. And by clicking this shortcut, all the settings below are filled automatically according to the style guide. And finally, Peter asked me to include totals or carryovers. And for this, I'm going to select the carryover styling. Now I'm done and click Apply Styling, and this will take a while since the carryover style needs a little bit more time, for example, about 20 seconds. So it's still working, and we can see that now the style is pushing the report back and compiling it, and soon we will see the results in the preview. I can already disable the style so we can see the results in full screen mode, and here it is. We changed the color, we changed the page orientation, and I'm going back to Seaside to start the report with live data. And let's change to preview, and here I can see it. We have subtotals, and on the next page we have a carryover. And this continues to work on this page, and on the next page, no, there are no carryovers anymore. So that's it. Now I think we can imagine that Peter's going to ask us for the same styling on other reports as well. So we can get prepared for this by sending these stylings to the styler. Let's call this styling board Peter's report layout. And there we have it in the styler. From here I can save it to disk, and I can open it at any time. And now I can add some reports to the layout card. Here we have some reports from the previous styling. I remove these and add some reports, let's say 1000 to 1100. And Qucamba Reports now fetches these reports from the NAV database and imports them. Here they are. And now I can, of course, I can delete some reports from the list if I don't want them to be included in the styling. And finally, I go to Run Batch, click on Start, and the styler begins to style the reports in the same way as we saw it previously. This will take a while since the carryover style takes some time, but we can continue to run the styling in the background, and I can work in the application and, for example, create the next wizard or preview another report. So this is it. There's one thing left I'd like to give you an impression of. Let's have a look on how we can use Qucamba Reports to change a layout without going into Seaside. I go to the preview and select the recently used layout and click on Design. This opens Visual Studio, or if you like, Report Builder. And after a few seconds we see the layout design, in which I'm going to change the color of the title just to have some change. So I'm going to change this from black to, let's say, tomato red. And each time I save this layout, Qucamba Reports recognizes it and updates the preview. From here, I can just click Save Layout to update the layout in the database, and that's it. So this is a very fluid design workflow. Some of our improvements had already been shipped with version 1 in order to keep our customers up to date, especially when using the most recent versions of Dynamics NAV. The most important improvement to version 1 was the implementation of RDLC 2016, which Microsoft started to use with Dynamics NAV 2018. And of course, these improvements are contained in version 2 as well. Besides that, we improved the preview, added workspaces for organizing your profiles, worked in the wizards, added a custom layout management, added new styles. But the most important thing we did is that now Qucamba Reports can be used to create style and preview reports for Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central. Now let's take a look on the most important improvements in detail. Maybe you already noticed that the formatting of region-dependent data wasn't as you expected it to be. In version 1, date and decimal fields were always displayed in US format, regardless of your local regional settings. In version 2, as you can see on the right side, Qucamba Reports uses the regional settings from Windows to format numbers and dates according to your country. So this seems to be just a small improvement, but it's something developers often complained about. The same applies to the use of profiles. Some partners with many customers complained about the handling of profiles when there are dozens of profiles to manage. To activate a particular profile, the user needed to find it in a long list of all profiles. In version 2, we introduced workspaces, of which you can think of as a new layer on top of profiles. This is the main starting screen of Qucamba Reports. On the left side, you can select between workspaces. You can have any number of workspaces, and by selecting a workspace, you switch the content area on the right side to a customizable view. In this view, we added a profiles part showing one tile for each profile. You can configure a profiles part to either show all profiles or to show profiles by filter or individual selection. You can even assign a profiles part from within a profile itself. This way you can organize your profiles in groups, and you can even place multiple profile parts in the same workspace. You may have noticed the different colors of profile tiles. The gray color means that the profile is currently not available. And we improved the profile test modules so that now you're going to have detailed information about why the profile is currently not available in the tooltip, like it is shown here. To the green and the blue tiles I'm going to come in a few minutes. In the bottom right, you can see all the reports that are currently available in the application, which means the application that you're connected to with the active profile. And finally, in the ribbon bar, you find the most important shortcuts actions to profile management, report creation wizards, the preview, and a toolbar button which switches the workspace view into design mode, allowing you to customize the workspace view and to add new workspaces. Workspaces are replicated between all installations of the same license automatically. This way, all Qucamba Reports users can have access to all profiles in a company without the need to copy profile setups between workstations. For security reasons, you can now decide in each profile whether to authenticate automatically or to let the user enter login credentials on profile activation. So let me show you a small demo of workspaces. In this demo, I'm going to create a new workspace. To begin customizing the workspace, I click on Customize Workspaces. So now I am in the design view of the workspace window, and below here I can add new workspaces, add my profiles part to the workspace content or my reports part. First, I'm going to add a new workspace here, and I enter a name for the new workspace, which is what's new. On the description, what's new in Qucamba Reports 2.0. So here you can see the new workspace, and I can select it as the current workspace, add a My Profiles part to the left side. I can give it a name, what's new, what's new workspace, and I can add a My Reports part to the right side, what's new reports. So, and if I leave the customization view, we can see this new workspace in action. We have all profiles and all reports from the current application. Also, I can customize each part by clicking on the tool button. So I can customize the My Profiles part by selecting all profiles that correspond to a particular filter, like all profiles with Qucamba in the name. And let's just test this. So just two profiles with Qucamba in the name. And I can also go and select the profiles I'd like to see in the list. For example, this one, and maybe this one. Okay. And I can customize the My Reports part as well. For example, to set a filter. I use the filter preset to, for example, filter to invoice. And as you can see here, there are only those reports left containing invoice in the ENU caption or the local caption. And I can change this filter to, let's say, Rechnung. No, there's nothing happening. I can also use IDs like this one. Okay. So this is the possibility of customizing your workspaces, and you can switch between workspaces by clicking the workspace or by using Ctrl and the numeric key, which is shown in front of the workspace description. Now let's come to the readiness for Dynamics 365 Business Central. As you've seen in the workspace, there are two tile colors being used for available profiles. The green tile represents an on-premise installation, which means that you can create, style and preview integrated layouts as well as custom layouts. Your design toolchain consists of Visual Studio, a report builder for layout design, as well as Seaside as your development environment. You can use on-premise installations of Dynamics NAV as well as Business Central. No matter if it's installed on a local server, on a virtual machine, or if it's hosted in an Azure virtual machine. On the other hand, the blue tile represents a Dynamics 365 Business Central setup, which allows you to create, style and preview integrated layouts, custom layouts, and a new layout type which is special to Business Central, the extension custom layout, which is a layout that resides in the extension's development workspace and it's shipped along with your app. Your toolchain can also consist of Visual Studio and Report Builder for layout design, but unlike the green tile, there is no Seaside or CAL anymore. Instead, Visual Studio Code is used as your development environment, and Qucamba Reports generates AL code natively, and it puts it directly into your extension's workspace. In Dynamics 365 Business Central, there are some limitations regarding the isolation of apps. For example, it's not possible to change the integrated layout of a report that is not contained in your app. For this reason, Qucamba Reports decides in each individual case whether it can update an existing integrated layout or whether it has to create a custom layout or even an extension custom layout. It just depends on what app your report belongs to. Business Central profiles can be configured to use a Dynamics 365 Business Central service hosted on Azure or installed in a sandbox environment. Summarizing, Qucamba Reports supports all versions starting from Dynamics NAV 2015 up to Dynamics 365 Business Central. When using Business Central, there are some more differences in the design workflow. As you can see here, there are two icons in the bottom of each tile. In on-prem profiles, the green tiles, you have an indicator for the availability of your NST on the left and an indicator for the availability of your database server on the right side. In the blue Business Central tile, the left icon indicates the availability of the Business Central service and the right icon indicates the availability of your extensions workspace, which actually is a copy from a Git repository. So usually you start by checking out your extension workspace from Git. From here, you're used to open the workspace in VS Code by opening it directly from the shell's context menu. As you can see, there's also an option available to open the extension in Qucamba Reports. When opened, Qucamba Reports searches for a profile that is related to this extension and activates the found profile. If it doesn't find a related profile, it starts the profile creation wizard automatically. And it already fills in all information that can be gathered from the extension folder itself. So there are just a few settings remaining that you have to configure in the profile creation wizard. After completing the profile creation, you can use a Business Central profile in just the same way as an on-prem profile. As you can see here, all the required symbols of tables and fields are available. You can select from tables of the base application, from the tables of your app, from table extensions of your app, and even from tables and table extensions of apps your app is dependent of. Finally, when creating or styling reports, the results can be either placed in your extensions workspace from where they're deployed and published along with your app, or you can even create custom layouts directly on Business Central. Let's take a look on how this works. In this demo, I'd like to create a new sales invoice for my very small app called Payback App. First, I go to my app's workspace folder. Which I've downloaded previously from my Git repository, and I right-click the folder to open it with VS Code. Then you may have already noticed that there's also an option called Open with Qucamba Reports. So I'm going to use this to start Qucamba Reports directly on the workspace. Now Qucamba Reports comes up and tries to identify a profile that is related to this app. It activates the profile and loads all reports from the application as well as from the app. So here it is. Now I'm going to use the document creation wizard, for which I have a shortcut up here. Pick a template from the list of templates. In this example, a portrait A4. And I pick a Tablix template. And then I can select from all report IDs in the app's range of IDs. Of course, only of those IDs that are still available. Going to take 50,000. And finally, I give my report a name. In this case, I use my sales invoice. In the next wizard step, I can select the document tables to use. I'm going to use the standard posted document tables for invoices, which I should find by searching for the word invoice. And from the list of from the category posted document tables, I'm going to pick sales invoice header and sales invoice line. And as I add them to the right, you can see that they've been already linked together. What we know corresponds to the data item link property in AL. So there's nothing more to do here, and I can click on next. In this wizard step, I can assign table fields to template controls. Qucamba Reports already detected and assigned most of the fields contained in the template, which I selected at the beginning. There's just one control left, which it couldn't assign automatically. And this is because there are various date fields in the sales invoice header. Here, I'd like to use the posting date as the invoice date. So I type post, oh, there it is, posting date. In this next wizard step, I can select the fields I'd like to have in my invoice. And as you can see here, there are already some fields selected. These are the fields that have been selected automatically when Qucamba Reports searched for an appropriate field to assign them to the template header. And you might wonder why the bill to address fields haven't been selected. The reason for that is that in document reports in general, the recipient address needs appropriate formatting according to the country of the recipient. Thus, we will select the appropriate address formatting function later, which doesn't rely on individual fields at all. However, the template doesn't contain information about which fields should be included for a sales line. For this reason, I'm going to select all the fields that I'd like to have included from the lines. So I'd like to have the type and the number, the description, unit of measure, quantity, unit price, line discount percent is fine, line discount amount, and of course I'd like to have the line amount. There it is. Okay, you can see all selected fields here on the right side. In this next step, I'm already in the visual part of the layout. You know, in the last steps, we defined the data model of the report, and now we come to the visual design. Here I can select which of the previously selected fields should be included in the layout. And since the report header is created automatically from the report template, I just need to select the fields that I'd like to have in the lines in the tablets control. So I just click on the lines. Here are the fields that have been selected on the previous step. And for grouping reasons, Qucamba Reports also included the document number and the line number as well. But I don't want them to appear in the list, so I remove them from this list. And maybe I'm going to move the quantity before the unit of measure. As you can see, I can reorder the tablets columns right here by dragging them around. So I'm done and click on next. In this step, I can select the totals for my document. There are no total fields available in the document header, but when I select the lines, you can see that Qucamba Reports shows me a list of all fields that can be summarized in a technical sense, which actually means all numeric fields. But from all these fields, Qucamba Reports suggests me to only total these two fields on the right. This is because they're the only fields from the list that can be totaled reasonably. You know, usually you wouldn't go and total quantities or unit prices and so on. So this is fine to me and I leave this as is. Now finally, in the last step, I can select an address formatting function for my document recipient, as I mentioned before. And in this list, I can select from all functions in the entire application that are capable of formatting an address out of a sales invoice header record. At the moment, there's only the code unit 365 available as provider, but you could also have your own functionality here. And if you do so, you can go right now, create the code unit or a function, then come back to Qucamba Reports and click this refresh link beside the control to have your recently added functions shown in this list as well. So I'm going to pick the sales invoice bill to function. And below there's also a copy loop checkbox, which I leave checked since I'd like to have the possibility to specify the number of copies when printing invoices. And finally, I click Finish to let Qucamba Reports create my report. Now, I switch back to my app in VS Code, go to the report folder, and here it is. Let's resize this pane. So here we have the AL code. And in the AL code, we have the RDLC layout property, which contains the relative path to my layout, which is the relative path relative to the app's workspace folder. And now I can deploy this report simply by deploying the app. Going into Business Central, and I'm going to search for my report, my sales. Here it is already. And let's pick some invoice ID, for example, this one. And this is my created invoice. So this was a very short introduction to using Qucamba Reports for Dynamics 365 Business Central. There are many more improvements that we made to version 2, which I'm not going to mention in this video explicitly. But let me talk about one more thing regarding licensing. We've had many inquiries from companies that are using NAV and that need to build reports for their own purposes. To also allow these companies to make use of Qucamba Reports, we are going to introduce a new end user license type starting in 2019. This license type is limited to the needs of small end users, which means that it allows the user to have a maximum of 2 profiles, which should be sufficient for having 1 profile for the live installation and 1 profile for test environments. Also, the badge styling won't be available in this license type. Those styles can be used within this instance styler. Styling boards can't be saved and loaded from disk to allow styling of many reports in a badge. And finally, the end user license is going to allow a maximum of 1 template per wizard, which means that the layout of a wizard can be customized to a corporate design, but there can only be 1 design for each wizard. And there are some legal limitations for using the end user license type as well. For example, the end user license cannot be used to sell or distribute reports that have been created or styled with this license type to other companies. For NAV and Business Central partners, there's nothing going to change. They'll still have to have the regular company license. They can't register for an end user license. The sales price for an end user license will be 1,785 euros excluding VAT, which already contains maintenance for 1 year. So that's it. Thanks for watching this video. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us by email to customer-service at cucumber.com or visit us on cucumber.com.